Hollywood loves to sell dreams, but what happens when the dream turns into a waking nightmare? Some of cinema's most beloved classics are haunted not by special effects, but by real-life tragedies, freak accidents, and a legacy of death that even the most hardened skeptic can't ignore. Have you ever wondered why some movies seem to carry a curse that lingers long after the credits roll? Buckle up, because these 8 iconic sets left scars, and we're about to lift the lid on the stories Hollywood tried to bury. The Wizard of Oz, 1939. Let's start with a Technicolor masterpiece that millions adore, but behind those ruby slippers and sing-alongs, The Wizard of Oz was a disaster zone disguised as family entertainment. Sure, the magic looked effortless on screen, but off-camera, it was more like a series of workplace safety violations sponsored by pure bad luck. First, the makeup. Buddy Ebsen, the original Tin Man, almost died after inhaling toxic aluminum dust from his costume. His lungs collapsed, his skin turned blue, and he was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, replaced without warning or fanfare. Jack Haley, who took over, wasn't spared either. The makeup gave him a severe eye infection that plagued him throughout the shoot. But the real mayhem belonged to Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch. Her face paint was made with copper, and when a pyrotechnic trapdoor malfunctioned during her big exit from Munchkinland, she was engulfed in flames, suffering 2nd and 3rd degree burns on her face and hands. She was out for 6 weeks, but the producers didn't even bother to change the schedule. Hamilton's stunt double fared no better, badly burned during another magical effect. And let's talk about the poor Munchkins. Many were paid next to nothing, lived in cramped quarters, and were rumored to have gotten up to wild, even destructive mischief between takes. The film's set was so riddled with accidents, there's a persistent legend of a background suicide visible in one shot, a myth, but it speaks to the dark cloud hovering over production. Even the beloved Toto wasn't safe. He was stepped on by a Winky guard and broke his foot, forcing a backup canine to fill in. Fires, injuries, and a trail of hospital visits. The Wizard of Oz might look like a trip to a fantasy land, but for those behind the scenes, it was a gauntlet of real-world nightmares. For a movie about finding your way home, it's ironic how many never fully recovered from their journey to Oz. Rebel Without a Cause, 1955. If you want proof that not all Hollywood curses are just spooky rumors, look no further than Rebel Without a Cause. The film that made James Dean a legend also cast a shadow that would haunt its stars for decades and take most of them before their time. Let's start with James Dean himself. The rebel icon drove fast both on and off screen, but it was just days before the film's release that Dean, age 24, wrapped his Porsche 550 Spider around another car and died instantly. His death hit Hollywood like a lightning bolt, cementing the film's status as more than a teen drama. It was a prophecy fulfilled in real life. But the curse didn't stop there. Natalie Wood, who played the tender, troubled Judy, met her own end in the icy waters off Catalina Island, drowned under circumstances so suspicious they're still debated today. She was just 43. Sal Mineo, the soulful Plato, was brutally stabbed to death behind his Los Angeles apartment at 37, a senseless act that shocked the city. Director Nicholas Ray struggled with addiction and mental health issues, and even Dennis Hopper, a supporting actor, faced decades of substance abuse and near-death moments before a late-life resurgence. Virtually every principal cast member faced premature or violent death, fueling decades of speculation. Was it just the odds, or did this film tap into something truly dark? And it's not just about death. The set itself was a pressure cooker of real-life tension. Dean and Hopper allegedly fought so fiercely during production that security was called. The shoot was plagued by accidents, broken hearts, and a sense of foreboding that only grew with each new tragedy. Rebel Without a Cause endures as a slice of pure Americana, a snapshot of lost youth and broken dreams. But for the people who brought it to life, it was more than a performance. It was an audition for a curse that no one wanted, and no one survived. The Conqueror, 1956. If there's a film that defines the phrase Hollywood disaster, it's The Conqueror. This movie didn't just bomb at the box office, it left a radioactive trail that haunted the cast and crew for decades. On paper, it sounded like a can't-miss spectacle. John Wayne playing Genghis Khan, a vast desert set, and Howard Hughes's deep pockets behind the camera. But what the studio didn't tell anyone was that their filming location, St. George, Utah, sat downwind from the U.S. government's nuclear testing grounds. During the early 1950s, the Nevada test site had been the scene of dozens of atomic bomb detonations, and the winds carried fallout directly into the region where the Conqueror set up shop. The crew rolled cameras as radioactive dust settled into every costume, every prop, and every catering tent. No one realized the danger until years later, when the grim tally began. Of the 220 cast and crew, a staggering 91 developed cancer, and at least 46 died from it, including John Wayne, Susan Hayward, Agnes Moorehead, and director Dick Powell. The numbers were so shocking that some started calling the movie the most toxic film ever made. Even Howard Hughes, racked with guilt, reportedly bought every print of the film and kept it out of circulation for years, hoping to bury the evidence. But the curse didn't stop with cancer. Production was plagued by sandstorms, freak accidents, and heat stroke, with extras collapsing under the relentless desert sun. Wayne suffered heat exhaustion so severe that he barely finished his scenes. A panther used on set attacked an actress, and expensive sets were destroyed by unpredictable winds. Nature itself seemed determined to sabotage the shoot. In hindsight, the film is a monument to everything that can go wrong when hubris meets ignorance. John Wayne as Genghis Khan is bad enough, but the true horror is the invisible legacy of fallout, sickness, and death that followed nearly everyone involved. Today, The Conqueror is less famous for its plot and more as a cautionary tale, a movie where the real danger didn't come from Mongol hordes, but from the very ground beneath their feet. Gone with the Wind, 1939. You'd think the most successful movie of Hollywood's golden era would be blessed by fortune, but Gone with the Wind was trailed by chaos, accidents, and more than a few tragic fates. Sure, the burning of Atlanta looked epic on film, but off camera, it was literally out of control. The legendary fire scene used real, condemned sets, drenched in gasoline and torched for the cameras. Flames soared higher than expected, nearly incinerating cast, crew, and equipment. Some extras were hospitalized, and firemen on set barely contained the inferno before it spread to nearby soundstages. And that was just day one. Vivian Leigh suffered exhaustion and nearly collapsed during her most emotional scenes. Clark Gable was plagued by persistent illness and personal scandal. The grueling 6-month shoot saw multiple directors fired. George Cukor was famously replaced after weeks. Victor Fleming suffered a nervous breakdown midway, and the script was rewritten so many times that even the cast lost track of the story. The film's curse seemed to reach beyond the set. Leslie Howard, Ashley Wilkes, died in a suspicious plane crash during World War II, a tragedy many believed was connected to his rumored spy work. Hattie McDaniel, the first black actor to win an Oscar, was banned from attending the film's Atlanta premiere due to segregation, then faced hardship and illness in the years that followed. Other strange happenings followed the cast. Carol Lombard, Gable's wife, died in a plane crash not long after the film's release, sending Gable into a deep depression. Olivia de Havilland endured lawsuits, feuds, and near-fatal health crises. The movie was a triumph on screen, but a trial by fire behind it, with personal losses that rippled for years. For all its southern romance and grand spectacle, Gone with the Wind left a legacy of suffering that few outsiders ever saw. Was it just bad luck? Or did the relentless ambition behind Hollywood's greatest epic come at a terrible price? One thing's certain, beneath the glamour, the curse of Tara was all too real. The Misfits, 1961. Some films are haunted by accidents. The Misfits was haunted by fate itself. What began as an art film for some of Hollywood's biggest icons turned into a bleak farewell tour, and it's impossible to ignore how the darkness behind the scenes left a trail of shattered lives. First, the cast. The Misfits starred Marilyn Monroe, Clark Gable, and Montgomery Clift, each carrying heavy baggage and personal demons. Monroe was in the throes of addiction, suffering through a crumbling marriage to Arthur Miller, who had penned the script specifically for her. She was frequently late, visibly unwell, and sometimes barely coherent on set. Her emotional breakdowns became so regular that filming ground to a halt for days at a time. Her last completed film foreshadowed her tragic overdose just a year later. Clark Gable, Hollywood's king, was determined to prove he still had it. He insisted on performing his own stunts, wrangling wild horses under the blazing Nevada sun, ignoring warnings from everyone around him. When production finally wrapped, Gable suffered a massive heart attack and died within days. Many, including his widow, blamed the film's grueling schedule for pushing him over the edge. Montgomery Clift, once Hollywood's golden boy, was already spiraling, addicted to painkillers and alcohol after a near-fatal car accident years before. His fragile state was plain for everyone to see. Monroe herself called him the only person I know who's in worse shape than I am. Director John Huston, a notorious gambler, was so distracted by drinking and losing money in Reno casinos that the production went wildly over budget, with tempers and tensions flaring constantly. As if the human toll wasn't enough, the shoot itself was plagued by disasters. Horses were injured, crew members suffered from heat stroke, and brawls broke out on set. The entire experience was so toxic that some called it a funeral march, the end of an era. Within a few years, Monroe, Gable, and Thelma Ritter were all dead. Clift followed in 1966. The Misfits was meant to be a meditation on loneliness and loss. Instead, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Watch it today, and you can almost feel the weight of a curse that no one saw coming until it was far too late. Ben-Hur, 1959. Ben-Hur is remembered for its chariot race, a sequence so thrilling, it's still cited as one of cinema's greatest action scenes. But few realize that the real danger wasn't on the screen. It was all too real for the people behind the reins. This epic's reputation for carnage and chaos has outlived even its Oscars. The chariot sequence alone required months of preparation and featured 78 horses, massive Roman sets, and hundreds of extras. Director William Wyler demanded authenticity, no trick shots, no special effects. That meant real chariots, real speed, and real consequences. Stuntmen were flung from their vehicles, trampled by horses, and tossed onto unforgiving sand. The legend goes that at least one stuntman died during filming, a claim hotly debated, but supported by decades of on-set gossip. Even without fatalities, the list of injuries was long: broken bones, concussions, and one infamous crash, where stunt driver Joe Knut was catapulted out of his chariot, narrowly escaping death thanks only to his father Yakima Knut's stunt expertise. The danger didn't end with the chariots. Filming in Rome during the hottest summer in decades, extras collapsed from heat exhaustion. A fire destroyed part of the costly set, and Charlton Heston nearly lost an eye in a freak prop accident. Horses were injured, and some reportedly were put down, sparking outrage among animal rights advocates. Behind the scenes, production was a money pit. The movie nearly bankrupted MGM, with cost overruns, endless delays, and director changes leaving the studio's future hanging in the balance. The pressure to succeed was immense, and tempers flared. Wyler clashed with his stars. Heston lost 20 pounds in the brutal heat, and rumor has it that the studio heads lived in constant fear of more tragedy. When Ben-Hur finally premiered, it swept the Oscars and became a legend. But ask anyone who worked on it and they'll tell you the cost was higher than the box office ever revealed. The chariots weren't the only things racing toward disaster. Sometimes, Hollywood's greatest spectacles come with a price that lingers long after the applause. Cleopatra, 1963. Some films are doomed from day one, and Cleopatra was a cursed blockbuster before Elizabeth Taylor ever set foot in ancient Egypt. The film's disasters have become Hollywood legend: budget blowouts, epic illnesses, and a string of near-fatal mishaps that still echo in the halls of 20th Century Fox. The original director was fired, the script rewritten endlessly, and filming moved from London to Rome after the British weather nearly killed the production, literally. The first outdoor set was so plagued by rain and mudslides that it became a health hazard. Then Elizabeth Taylor collapsed from pneumonia, requiring an emergency tracheotomy and months of recovery. The near-death episode was so serious it made international headlines, with doctors fearing she wouldn't survive. When she did return, the shoot was already hemorrhaging money. Cleopatra would become the most expensive movie ever made at the time, nearly bankrupting the studio. But the real drama happened on and off the set. Taylor's scandalous affair with Richard Burton became tabloid gold and led to public outrage, blacklisting by the Vatican, and marital breakdowns for both stars. The couple's volcanic relationship erupted into legendary arguments, jealous rages, and nights of heavy drinking that often spilled into filming. One love scene was interrupted when Burton accidentally split Taylor's scalp open with a prop vase, requiring urgent stitches. The set itself wasn't safe either. Extras collapsed in the Italian heat, stage hands fell from towering platforms, and a worker was reportedly crushed during the construction of Cleopatra's grand barge. Even the animals weren't spared. Horses bolted, snakes escaped, and at least one tiger used for a spectacle scene nearly mauled its handler. By the time Cleopatra finally limped into theaters, nearly every principal cast member had been hospitalized, divorced, or left emotionally battered. The film's shadow left the studio in financial ruin for years and cemented its reputation as the most cursed epic of Hollywood's golden age. For all the gold and glory on screen, the real story was pure disaster. The Ten Commandments, 1956. When Cecil B. DeMille set out to film The Ten Commandments, he wasn't just aiming for biblical spectacle. He created a production so massive, it seemed the very heavens wanted to intervene. But the real plagues didn't come from the script. They struck the set itself, leaving a legacy of bizarre accidents, terrifying mishaps, and enough near-death moments to make Moses himself nervous. The logistics were Herculean. Thousands of extras, miles of set built in Egypt's remote deserts, and animals ranging from camels to cobras. Right from the start, disaster stalked the crew. Deadly snakes slithered onto the set, biting extras and requiring frantic trips to local hospitals. Workers were hospitalized for heat stroke and dehydration as temperatures soared past 120 degrees. At least one crew member died from a snake bite, and another perished after a scaffolding collapse. Charlton Heston, who played Moses, wasn't immune to the curse. He nearly drowned while filming the Red Sea parting scene, and at another point suffered a severe sunburn that blistered so badly he had to film key scenes in agony. Yul Brynner, cast as the Pharaoh, broke several ribs after falling from a chariot and spent days in traction, barely able to stand for his scenes. The immense sets themselves had their own hazards. DeMille suffered a heart attack on location, delaying the shoot, but returned to finish the film against doctors' orders. Extras were injured by runaway chariots, collapsing statues, and even trampled by camels during the chaotic Exodus scenes. Superstitious crew members began whispering that the project was cursed, and a few reportedly refused to set foot on certain sound stages after dark. Despite the carnage, The Ten Commandments became a monumental box office success, but the human cost was enormous. To this day, stories of the film's accidents and untimely deaths linger, adding an eerie afterlife to a movie already steeped in legend. In Hollywood, not even Moses could part the Red Sea of misfortune that swept over this epic. So the next time you lose yourself in Hollywood's golden age, remember, some classics come drenched in more real-life horror than their wildest scripts. Do you believe a movie set can truly be cursed? Or is it just the price of chasing immortality under hot lights and higher stakes? Let us know which story shocked you most. Hit subscribe for more behind-the-scenes secrets, and never forget, the ghosts of old Hollywood still linger in the celluloid shadows. Are you brave enough to look behind the curtain?